The labour market shows plenty of resilience with 47,500 new jobs created last month. The share market hits and closes at a record high, and maybe the end is nigh for Tupperware. Welcome to Fear and Greed Daily Business News for people who make their own decisions. It is Friday, the 20th of September 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, the main story this morning, around 47,500 new jobs were created last month, mostly part-time roles, and the unemployment rate came in at 4.2% as the labour market really continues to show a hefty chunk of resilience. Is a chunk of resilience a thing?
I think so. Whatever it is, it's the main reason we're not going to see an interest rate cut anytime soon. Yesterday's labour force statistics from the Bureau of Statistics were good by any measure, and it was the fifth month of better than expected data. No wonder the Reserve Bank thinks that the labour market is still providing fodder for inflation. Over the past year, the total number of people employed has risen by 2.7%, but the unemployment rate has also risen by 0.7 percentage points since its low. There's so much going on in the labour market, including more people looking for work, possibly because of the cost of living crisis. There's also plenty of migration going on. Economists say the unemployment rate is a good way to judge what's happening, and that is trending higher, though it is still very low, and it's only trending higher very slowly. Jobs growth has been driven by part-time work, and total hours worked across the country rose only slightly, while the level of underemployment is ticking higher. None of that is particularly good news. The Reserve Bank has recently pushed the idea that the unemployment rate needs to rise before it will consider cutting rates. Yesterday's figures certainly support the view that nothing's going to happen on interest rates anytime soon.
Now, the unemployment rate wasn't the only big economic news yesterday. In fact, yesterday was pretty much Christmas Day for economists, wasn't it? Because the US Federal Reserve cut the benchmark rate in the world's biggest economy by 50 basis points.
The era of easing is upon us, at least in the US, with the Fed signalling more reductions are on the way. It's the first cut in more than 4 years, leaves the Fed funds target rate at between 4.75% and 5%. The large cut suggests the Fed is worried about weakening in the US economy and labour market. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that the US economy is still in a good place and the goal is to keep it there. He very much reiterated the idea that he didn't think a slump was coming. He just wanted to make sure things were ticking over. He said rates were not on a preset path, so if inflation proves sticky, the Fed could dial back policy restraint more slowly. The rate cut initially triggered a rally in equities before they closed slightly lower on Wall Street. That's on fears that the US economy is weakening too much. The fact that the US has started cutting rates and the Reserve Bank is determined to keep rates on hold this year prompted a comment from Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. He said the US Fed was cutting interest rates from a higher starting point than Australia. That's kind of true. The US benchmark peaked at about 5 to 5.25%. The local cash rate is 4.35%.
I think it's a fairly apt description to say that it was like Christmas Day for economists. So it makes sense that your guest today, Sean, in the Fear and Greed business interview,
I'm interested in this segue here. Yes, how'd you get?
Is in fact an economist. It's a very simple, very clear segue. I think. What were you? I wasn't going to compare Diana
to Santa Claus or something. Yeah,
Diana Messina at AMP is actually Santa Claus. No. It's just, she's an economist. She would have had a great time yesterday.
Well, plenty of gifts in the interview in terms of economic knowledge. Maybe we could go that way.
I'm not groaning because that was terrible. I'm groaning because I wish I'd thought of that.
Anyway, it's a great interview with Diana. We go through the Fed's decision. We go through unemployment and what happens now on interest rates. Fantastic communicator. Diana always seems to put it in plain English in a way that I can understand it. So I loved interviewing her.
It's coming up after the show. Stick around for that one. Local markets, how did they perform yesterday?
Well, the US rate cut and the unemployment figures combined to push the local market to a new record close of 8,182 points, but not before it briefly, at about just before 3 p.m. yesterday, touched 8,200 points. Surely that's got champagne all over it. The big iron ore miners did well following a rise in the price of the commodity. Rio jumped 3.4%, BHP 2.8%, Fortescue Metals Group 1.7%. Woodside was also up sharply, rising more than 1%. Staying in the resources sector, the uranium stocks generally did pretty well. James Hardie jumped 5%. Otherwise, Goodman, ANZ and Macquarie all rose. Worst of the large caps were QBE, Transurban and REA Group. In corporate news, engineering group Monadelphous Group unveiled new contracts totaling $230 million. Commercial explosives maker Orica expects earnings to be above previous forecasts for the September half year. Brisbane-based testing giant ALS said its minerals business has faced volume headwinds, triggering a 9% slump in its share price. It was definitely the worst of the day. And Sims Metal Group updated the market, sending its share price up 12%. So obviously investors like that one.
Now, Sean, thanks to Blue Chip Communication, the experts helping financial services companies market, communicate and grow. Visit bluechipcommunication.com.au. We've talked a lot about international markets. Much else going on?
Well, the interest rate decision from the Fed was very much the dominant theme over the past 36 hours. Wall Street initially hit a record high after the news, but then fell back. The question for equities investors is whether they should be excited about lower interest rates helping consumers and corporate earnings, or maybe they should be worried that it suggests a sharp slowdown in the US economy. That's what they're sort of judging at the moment. The move in rates pushed the price of gold above $2,600 an ounce for the first time. Oil was slightly lower. All the interest rate discussion has helped the Aussie dollar appreciate against the US dollar. In fact, it pushed back above 68 US cents. It's been a couple of years since the local currency has been consistently above that level.
All right, we've got a bit to get through, Sean. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the relationship between Australia and the United States remains strong, according to Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, as he prepares to meet US President Joe Biden at the Quad Leaders Summit.
Speaking from Cairns before he leaves for the US, Mr Albanese said the meeting was an opportunity for all sides to re-engage. He said the relationship is based on common values and the alliance has remained strong no matter who's the President of the United States and who's the Prime Minister of Australia. Now, he said he had a very close personal relationship with President Joe Biden and he was looking forward to seeing him again, notwithstanding he's not running in November.
Sean, Australia has abstained from a United Nations vote calling on Israel to end its, quote, unlawful presence in Palestine.
The United Nations General Assembly adopted a Palestinian-drafted resolution demanding Israel end its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory within 12 months. The resolution received 124 votes in favour, while 43 countries, including Australia, abstained, and Israel, the United States and 12 others voted no. Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong told ABC Radio the government looked very carefully at the resolution and sought amendments that meant the resolution better reflected the July opinion of the International Court of Justice. That opinion said Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories and settlements was illegal and should be withdrawn, a step down from what was put forward yesterday in terms of the phrase unlawful presence. When those amendments weren't forthcoming, Australia abstained.
Now, this is interesting, Sean. We talk a bit about the Future Fund because obviously it's one of the country's biggest investors, and it's revealed that it voted against Woodside's climate change strategy, heaping more pressure onto the oil and gas giant.
Yeah, it wasn't alone. Nearly 60% of the register voted against the strategy in April, and with the Future Fund now publicly adding its voice, Chair Richard Goyder and Chief Executive Meg O'Neill, that's of Woodside, are certainly under pressure to improve the group's efforts in transitioning to greener energy. The Future Fund invests about 10% of its assets, that's about $23 billion, in Aussie equities. It's pretty powerful. Yesterday, it released its proxy voting record, and it shows that the Future Fund voted against the executive payment plans at a number of major companies, including Fortescue Metal and Harvey Norman. It also voted against the re-election of a number of directors at Qantas. Now, I wouldn't say the Future Fund is an activist investor, but clearly it is active in using its shareholdings to make its voice heard. By releasing all the details of its proxy voting yesterday, it just throwing its weight around just a little bit.
Just a wee bit of weight. Speaking of W's, Woolworths, yes. What a segue. Oh, I'm proud of this one.
Nice.
Woolworths is under pressure to ditch the Big W discount chain and spin off its New Zealand division and return to focusing on supermarkets.
Yeah, there's been talk about this for quite a few months, particularly the Big W discount chain talk. Woolies has been the underperformer of the big two supermarket chains, with Coles doing better in terms of sales growth. Coles is considered a simpler business than Woolies. Now, activist shareholder First Sentier Investors It's got a small position in the supermarket chain. It reckons that the Big W business is destroying capital, according to a report in the Fin Review. Big W, of course, competes with Kmart and Target. It's struggled for several years. Blackwattle Investment Partners, it says that the New Zealand supermarkets division hasn't performed well and could be sold off. Woolies, mind you, it bought Countdown, the store. It's expanded aggressively in New Zealand. It now has about 200 stores. All these comments are directed towards the new Woolly CEO, Amanda Bardwell, who only started in the job 3 weeks ago.
Goodness me. And already dealing with plenty of commentary.
Yeah. Well, when you're a new boss coming in, you're probably not a bad time to make the changes.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Saudi Aramco, the world's biggest oil producer, will indirectly grow its interest in several Australian LNG projects through an increased stake in Mid-Ocean Energy.
Mid-Ocean, started by US private equity player EIG, owns small stakes in 3 large local LNG projects: Woodside Energy's Pluto LNG, Chevron's Gorgon venture, and Shell's Queensland Curtis project. Mid-Ocean said that Saudi Aramco will increase its stake in the company to 49%, according to a report in the Fin. Aramco took an initial $500 million interest late last year in Mid-Ocean, in which Mitsubishi is also an investor. Mid-Ocean led the consortium that made an unsuccessful takeover bid for Origin Energy last year, so it knows this economy pretty well.
All right, turning to international news now, and pro-Kremlin websites and social media accounts are pushing the unsubstantiated claim that Ukraine orchestrated a potential assassination attempt against Donald Trump.
Shortly after Ryan Wesley Ruth was identified as the suspect believed to have pointed a rifle towards a Florida golf course where Mr. Trump was playing over the weekend, Russian state media outlets and officials on social media suggested the 58-year-old was an agent working on behalf of Kyiv, according to a report in the Washington Post. Ruth's social media posts show he is a staunch supporter of Ukraine, who travelled there and attempted to join the war effort, but Ukrainian government officials have denied that he has any links to the government or military. The claims were soon echoed by conservative commentators in the United States. It just gets weirder and weirder.
Yeah, it certainly does. Now, walkie-talkies and solar equipment exploded across Lebanon yesterday morning, Australian time, in an apparent second wave of attacks targeting devices a day after pages used by Hezbollah blew up.
At least 14 people were killed yesterday morning and more than 450 wounded in the second wave, according to Hezbollah. The attacks are widely believed to have been carried out by Israel targeting Hezbollah. Now, it's escalated fears of an all-out war in the region. Several blasts were heard at a funeral in Beirut for 3 Hezbollah members and a child killed by the exploding pages the day before. The toll from the 2 days of blasts is now 32 dead, including at least 2 children, and more than 3,000 injured. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said the country is entering a new phase of fighting on its northern border with Lebanon.
I mentioned this last one here, Sean, at the top of the show. The company behind Tupperware, the plastic kitchenware that revolutionised food storage after World War II. And really, it just became part of the 1950s and the 1960s, just everyday way of life. And you would remember it well, Sean. It's filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah, 70s as well, can I add in? 70s as I remember getting all this sort of, being in Mulder Street in Orange. It's where we lived in Orange. And Mum coming, Tupperware was everything. They had Tupperware parties. People would come around and sell Tupperware. I mean, crazy times in Orange. Tupperware parties.
But it is still a thing. And really? Actually we have a running joke about what we refer to as legit Tupperware. And if you have legit Tupperware, that is fancy stuff, because there's so much knockoff Tupperware and stuff out there. But if you've got legit Tupperware,
the real Tupperware,
you are a fancy person.
Well, Tupperware Brands is actually a company out of Orlando, Florida. It said it's seeking Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection after struggling to revitalise its core business and failing to secure a takeover offer, despite enjoying the same cultural ubiquity as Kleenex, Teflon, other brands whose trademark names are eponymous with entire product categories. I've got to throw Breville into that one, toasted sandwich maker.
Any chance to throw Breville in anywhere and you take it.
Tupperware suffered from waning sales, rising competition, and the limitations of the direct-to-consumer marketing model that once defined its success. Those Tupperware parties aren't working quite as well. According to Associated Press, the company said that consumers are shifting away from direct sales. Also, the company cited growing public health and environmental concerns about plastic, internal inefficiencies that made it challenging to operate globally, and the challenging microeconomic environment of the past several years for its financial straits. The plastic one, though, I do like, because when I thought about it, I'm surprised it's made it this far.
I suppose there's an argument to be made, though, the fact that you are then reusing this over and over.
True.
And legit Tupperware should last for
absolutely.
years and years and years. Better than using, say, your Chinese food container, which might last kind of twice, and then it breaks, and then it's in the bin.
So, the red ones, is that legit Tupperware? The ones you buy at Woolies and Coles?
No. That's like decor or something like that.
It is decor. Yeah. Oh, well done. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, I know my containers, Sean.
Yeah, you do.
Was there a point about the red ones from Woolies, or were you just kind of mentioning them?
No, I was just trying to, because my house is full of the red ones.
No, they're not legit Tupperware. You'll know legit Tupperware because your food just tastes so darn fresh. Up next, Sean, is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Your guest today, Diana Messina, Deputy Chief Economist from AMP.
All about the US interest rate cut yesterday and the labour force figures from the Bureau of Statistics, what it means for Australia and what it means for interest rates.
Yeah, it is a great chat. It is coming up in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, and keep an eye on your playlist because at about midday today, I say about midday, it's exactly midday, the bonus episode of Ask Fear and Greed will drop. And this is a fun one, isn't it, Sean? It is all about the language that you use to describe markets.
Yeah, so someone pointed out that I use all sorts of adjectives to describe markets, and they're right. And the question was basically, does it actually mean anything? What you're saying, does it mean anything? So I give a very legitimate response about why it does mean something, or something like that anyway.
Which is my favourite question that anyone has ever asked of you. Does what you say actually mean anything? And you had to take it as a legit question and answer it. It is a great bonus episode. Comes out at midday. Keep an eye on your playlist for that one. And if you've got your own question, feel free to shoot it on through to us. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Friday, the 20th of September, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.